All right, hello. Welcome to Dargon DM. We're going to be in the Dargon Den. We're going to be discussing our views on a few videos we've been talking about, and essentially it kind of goes along the lines of if you complain about a DM, why don't you DM yourself?
Yeah, so a while back we watched some videos on a video that was started, I believe, by Legacy Game Mastering, and then it was responded to by both Chalice and Chains and Red Dice Diaries. And the bottom line was there were people out there asking in the community for games and then making these long lists of demands of what they wanted.
I want to expand upon that, how you brought up that some GMs had an issue with players putting out these long lists. I actually have no problem with players presenting what they're looking for, and I think that's incredibly important as long as they're open to maybe changing some ideas to help fit everyone's views. But for the most part, if you're talking to somebody and they're like, I want to join in a game, and they'll give you any information, it's a lot easier when you first look at the player and be like, okay, he's looking for an evil campaign that fits mine, but he's also looking for heavy combat. I don't do a lot of heavy combat, so instantly right there you can be like, I don't want to play with that guy.
Right.
So I think just instantly saying, oh, you're putting out what you want, let's not be like that. And it's just really hard to kind of sift through what you're looking for. It's like a dating profile almost.
People were going so far as to say, we've got 4 or 5 friends. I get it. Like, I don't necessarily want to run out and buy a system and try to run it if I might not even end up liking it. People who are like trying to play the game for the first time. I could see that. Yeah. But then they're saying, oh, but we can only play this night. We want to play this game, and we have to be able to do it this way. And, I get where they're coming from. These people are being a little bit rude.
I guess you could say a little bit rude. But
what they're looking for. It's one thing for me to say, hey, I really want to learn how to play werewolf. Is there anybody out there who's running it? Can I jump in as a beginner, and will you help me with character creation?
Yeah.
That's a completely different thing than saying, our whole gaming squad wants to play werewolf and we can only play Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and, and we have to be able to play in Chicago, and,
I think maybe it's just the way that they're placing it is wrong, because even then I can still make that sound. I feel like I'm a part of a gaming group of friends, but we're all nurses. So we all have crazy schedules, and we'll all have only one day off, which is Wednesday. We're really hoping to find maybe a GM that's willing to work with our crazy schedules, and we want to try this new system. I think it's just probably the way that they place it. Because there is a lot, especially meeting up, there's a lot of criteria that has to fit to be able to make something work.
Yeah, so. I agree. I agree completely. And I think that's the point, is like, it's all about how you put it. If you're going to make a request, maybe you frame it and you give the people a reason to understand why you have a specific criteria in order to play. And maybe if you're letting them know, hey, we're not sure we want to buy this system, and nobody feels like they're qualified to run it. That's a whole different request than just making a list of this is what we want.
Yeah.
Without talking to the DM about their style or what.
It's kind of like a pre-session 0 before the session 0's even started.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Chalice and Chains actually went so far as to say, you're not entitled to be a DM, so be your own DM. And the thing is, for me, and this is kind of why I wanted to do this video, is that for me, running the game is not the same as playing the game. And I was immediately kind of put off by like, hey, but not everybody's GM material. I certainly do not feel that I am GM material. I'm not a storyteller. I don't have kind of that mindset. So I right away was like put off by that. Like, if I want to learn a game, but then I'm not going to be rude about it like these people were. So like,
there's a balance
thing. And so I totally understood where everybody was coming from, and I just don't know that the answer is always that somebody has to run it. I am willing to run it if that's the only way I'm going to get to experience the game. I am totally ready to run, jump in and try to run Corporation or Shadowrun for our group with the quick start guides. But I'd much rather play with somebody else first, and or find somebody who's really good at running games to run it. that would be my preference. But if that's the only way I get to give it a try, then okay, I'll run it. But it's definitely a fallback position. So,
one thing I was thinking, a good way to introduce and kind of expands upon both the lines going like you're entitled to a GM. You're gonna have to do it yourself. I'm not sure I want to comment too much on that mentality. You're not really entitled to a GM, but it's also kind of rude saying that just because you're looking for something, you have to run it. But there is a good source of running. Not only does it running give you a better understanding of all the rules, one of the things I was thinking is actually much easier to get a GM into your group if you first run it for them, have them as a player, and be like, you can just play with us for a little bit, used to us, and then maybe if you want to run something, you can run something in time. And I promise you, a GM that enjoys GMing isn't going to want to stay a player forever. They're going to want to start playing with the system themselves after seeing you stumble around with it. Kind of like how you did with us. You first started GMing for our group, and then I picked up after you once you had your little adventure.
Yeah, and I was more than ready to hand over the reins. I wanted to get us finally playing, and so I did run, and I ran modules. So, but I was very happy when you took over and I didn't have to run anymore. So the interesting thing to me is that recently I was listening to the Gaming and BS podcast, which is one that I've been listening to more and more. And I feel like, I don't always agree with everything in their content, and I wouldn't expect to, but I find more and more I'm saying, hey, Nate, listen to this episode. Hey, listen to this episode. And or getting inspired by something I heard and kind of running, just finding that I'm one of those people that when I'm given fuel, I get more excited, and they are definitely keeping my kind of obsession level with the hobby really up at a good level. And so it's keeping me in there. And I was listening to their episode. Actually, they had just the episode before the one I'm going to reference, they had just done an episode with some people about the cipher system and kind of learning how that worked. And so in the following episode, which was actually about introducing people to new games, which I'm all about. I want to learn new games. I want to jump in and try lots of systems. And there were some people who responded to some comments about the cipher system. Apparently in that system, the GMs don't really roll dice. And so somebody
heard about that too, yeah.
It was really interesting. And so somebody had written in and said, "You're taking away my dice? Man, I want to play too, and that's part of the fun for me is getting to roll the NPCs and do this stuff." And so that was the first kind of aha moment for me, was like, oh, okay, this GM at least feels like he's playing when he gets to roll dice. Like that's part of the experience for him that makes it worthwhile for him or her to run the game. Later in the broadcast, as they were talking about how to introduce people to new games, there was this split between the two hosts. Brett felt that everybody's got to read the rules, at least read the stuff that applies to them. They don't need to know the rules forward and back, but they should read through how to create a character and, read through the basic mechanics of how the game works, conflict resolution, and that sort of thing. Meanwhile, Sean, who's the other host, said, hey, when I'm running a game, I do read the rules, but when I'm playing, I just want you to tell me what to do. I want to just go in and play the game and learn by doing, which is definitely more my thing. But what came out of that is this, again, another aha moment of, okay, well, Brett is this GM, and he actually geeks out on the rules. He loves reading the rules. He loves learning the rules. He loves teaching people how to play the games in a very rules. He flows. There's been other episodes where he talks about just saying, hey, I'm not going to worry about that right now. We'll look it up later. But at the same time, he does read them. And he reads through 2 or 3 times. And so, again, to him, part of playing is reading the rules and learning how the mechanics work. So that made me think, okay, well, maybe that's where Sam of Chalice and Chains is coming from. Maybe that's his perspective, where to me, that's work. GMing is work. thinking through the stories, trying to do good descriptions. I'm not a storyteller by nature, so I have to kind of struggle with that. I'm all about, I want to create a character. I want to get in there and, you know, do combat and have social interactions and all the things that go with being a PC. And to me, that's playing. And running isn't. But you wouldn't have a game if you didn't have both. So obviously GMing is playing, but it's just not the role for the playing that I personally care for.
That's a good point. One thing I didn't get though, actually kind of falls along the lines of what you're talking about, is one of the videos we watched. Hopefully, you can help me put the name out. I don't want to offend anybody who's watching it, but the GM that was talking was complaining, complaining be the word I think, but that how much work GMing is. And might be an unpopular opinion I have. I really don't find it to be that much work. It's not that hard flipping through the books and finding generals. It's not that hard leading a story, especially when you have active and interested players. It doesn't feel like a chore. And if it starts to feel like a chore, I would say run away from GMing for now. Come back later as a PC. Because honestly, I think that a dedicated PC puts about almost as much work as a dedicated GM does. And you can tell when there's not a dedicated GM or a dedicated PC. You can see the difference.
Yeah. I definitely think there's work involved in it, but then there we go again. It's mindset difference, right? Like if you really enjoy creating stories and telling stories and creating plot and figuring out how to work characters' backstories in, you know, or if you're a lazy GM style GM, maybe, you know, people who just kind of go with the flow and, you know, pull up roll tables and do things in game and source the table, then, you know, maybe that's also not so much work.
I disagree with you on that, pulling up roll table and lazy GM. That's another comment on it. But
I'm specifically referring to the book The Lazy GM and the techniques it talks about, which include using roll tables. I'm not saying that to use roll tables is lazy. I'm just saying that there's a technique there that people, a lot of people have read that book, including me, and there's something to be said for not having a huge plot. It's about not having a huge plot and utilizing.
Not having it all planned out in advance and it's all improvised.
Yeah, and that's where roll tables are great. They're great in a lot of ways, but it's one of the things that's really cool about roll tables is that you can improvise. And so then again, not so much work, but I think if you're going into a huge plot point and you're doing, I can see where somebody would think it's work, but I kind of felt like that was one of my kind of questions. I kind of felt like I wanted to ask him if he's burned out or what, or maybe he's just been burned by some people, you know, in other games or something when he's gone the extra mile for him. Who knows? But
that's what I'm thinking. He must have tried really hard and then just had players that just kind of spit back.
Right. And I don't want to be too judgmental, but yeah, that was kind of my thing too. I thought, well, if it's that much work, maybe you shouldn't be running games.
Not running games forever, but come back when it stops feeling like a chore.
Yeah. Or go play for a while. Get somebody to run for a while. Which that's coming around the pipe for me because I have both GMs that I play with, you and Bill, both saying they want to play once in a while, and will I run something? And so we'll see.
I will probably have somebody. Maybe even Joey could run. But anyways, I think this should cover this topic. So anyways, guys, thank you for sitting and listening. Please, this is a very controversial video, so please put in your opinions down below. I want to know if you think that players could be a little bit more expressive on what they want from a game, or if they're too expressive, you think that they should just start running and learn how to do it themselves. I definitely think that every player should run a game at least once so they can get the idea what it is. While I did say it doesn't feel like work to me, it is a lot of work being a GM. There is more involved mathematically and technically, and you are carrying the whole entire plot. But if you're the type of person that's good with it, usually it doesn't feel so, such a burden. For me, it's really hard to make a really interesting player, but I can make interesting NPCs off the wazoo. So anyways, once again, please like, share, subscribe, and get out there and get gaming.
Bye.